Let's talk about James Harden.
James Harden.
Yeah, James Harden, who has really embraced this sort of point guard role that we saw him play in Brooklyn, is like point guard James Harden, where it's no longer Harden ball, not the entire offense doesn't run through him, but you still start with all these pick and roll progressions. And in his case, in Los Angeles, we've seen this kind of synergy that he's developed with Ivica Zubac on the pick and roll, where he can hit him with lobs. He can hit Zubac in the middle of the paint, and Zoo can kind of spin and find a finish that way. And, Harden had this, I think, in the past with certain players like Clint Capella, where you have the vertical threat, but you also have the timing of just how to hit him in the lane and set up that player to do his thing. And then once defenses start to say, like, okay, we're going to pay a little bit more attention to Zubac as a roll threat with Harden, he can start skipping it to the corner to open three-point shooters or run the pick and roll and swing it to, one of the other Clippers out on the wing or something like that. He's been able to develop this, and it's really started to kind of kickstart the Clippers offense into a more organic position where Harden is the guy at the center of the ship. But again, it's not Harden ball. He can initiate and just let plays unfold where you're hitting Paul George, you're hitting Kawhi Leonard, all this stuff, and the Clippers offense has taken off.
Yeah, some of those quick hitting actions, like it's not as much as, what are we, 2017 Rockets, pound, screen, get some switches, and he's going to attack. There is some these two guys are maybe going to be in a horns action, and then somebody cuts to the basket and he throws a lob to them. Or even if he does get downhill off a pick and roll, I think something that's really helped him as he's aged and maybe lost a step in his speed is he's a really strong dude, right? So he can get down low. He's kind of bouncing off guys as he goes down there, and then, they see the zoo lob coming, but nope, skip it to the opposite corner and he's going to hit somebody for a three. We know that he can do some of this primary creation kind of thing. But you look at some of the lineups when he's on the court with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and I know I didn't see some of the granular stats, but his usage percentage when he's on the court with those two is the lowest of the three. His scoring per 100 is the lowest of the three. It's a lot of this secondary type of passing that he's doing, right? You see some of these beautiful game possessions from the Clippers, and he's sort of at the center of it. He gets a step on his guy, and maybe throws behind the back pass, somebody cuts, he catches the ball and immediately touch passes it to the corner, and then all of a sudden he gets the ball again, he gets a little bit of space, and instead of dancing and doing the step back three thing, he drives into the paint, draws some more attention, kicks it to the corner, bam, Paul George corner pocket three. Right? And so he's at the center of a lot of this beautiful, smooth ball movement that we were extolling the greatness of guys like Joe Ingles or Kyle Anderson, Nick Batum. And he's sort of flowing in between, I'm an on-ball pick and roll type of creator, but also I'm over here and I'm ready to do some of the second side quick sort of passing. And above anything else I've seen from James Harden, those are the passes that make me the most impressed.
Yeah, I think an interesting wrinkle there as well is what you mentioned about his size and strength. So part of this Clippers offense that we're seeing is using him as a passer from the elbow, a little bit like those elbow passers that we talked about earlier. So in Harden's case, they throw him at the elbow and he can hit cutters or let the kind of offense unfold out of that area. And so Paul George and Kawhi Leonard naturally can do their off-ball thing, and I think it's kind of lubricated some of the offense without playing Harden ball necessarily. They had this really cool sequence where Harden's at the elbow, and I think it's Paul George who runs across the court on an Iverson cut from one side of the floor to the other, and then gets back door, and Harden snaps it to him beautifully for a layup, right? Then they run the same thing in a different game, and the defense switches, so Paul George isn't open on that back door. He can turn and reuse the same screen and pop back out and hit a three at the top of the key because that's Paul George's game, that movement shooting kind of stuff. Even one more in that set is they throw it to Harden at the elbow. And this is not an easy pass to make, but the Clippers create space by emptying the corner. So George is now the only guy on that side of the court next to Harden at the elbow. Harden throws this beautiful entry pass over the top to George, and they get really good offense out of that. So I think this all ties together in terms of using him as a point guard and sort of also being able to maximize the other players on the court and let everybody kind of do their thing in a way that fits together.
And I think it really helps that neither Paul George nor Kawhi Leonard really seem like guys that want to be like these mega creators. Like, they don't want to be a guy that's like, I'm going to have the ball and have, 50 pick and roll possessions. I'm going to isolate this many times. They like moving off ball a little bit more. Kawhi Leonard likes nestling into the post and waiting for the pass. Paul George can battle a little bit, spin baseline, try and go for a lob. And James Harden, like I said, the diversity of his passing is just so much more expansive than I'm remembering. You talk about the high-low passes. I'm seeing a lot more kick-aheads, like really pushing it ahead to these other guys, and he's really great at just bouncing it beneath a defender's hands to get to a guy that's cutting to the basket. And, James Harden's not a perfect passer, right? I don't think by any means he's like the best passer in the league. You still see a couple of times where somebody's open for a split second in the paint, and you're like, okay, I can imagine somebody else making this pass. He misses it. But like in terms of like the array of passes he can make, like we said, using his strength, be positioned in these different parts of the floor, to me, he's definitely a top 7 passer in the league based on all of that.
Yeah, one thing I've mentioned before is some of his limitations with like right to left passing or being dominant as a left-handed passer. And even lately, I've seen a couple nice right-handed passes from Harden out of pick and roll and things like that. So let's go back to what you just mentioned about his unselfishness when all these guys are out there on the court together, Cody. In 895 minutes with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, Harden is just averaging 17 points per 75. That's it. 17 points per 75, 65% true shooting, so very low volume, higher efficiency, very, very high efficiency, in fact, and the raw assists go up in that case. I think it's like 13 assists per 100 possessions or something like that. So really playing this theoretical role of like the ballast and the on-ball playmaker and handling all this decision-making around players like Kawhi and Paul George, where they don't have to do all the heavy lifting, but you still end up with an offense where everything kind of fits pretty well with each player playing their role.
Thanks for listening. You can find the full episode of this Thinking Basketball podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts.